And can I get a motion to approve the last minutes with the revision stated?
I move to approve. This is Anne.
This is Jeff. I would second that motion.
Thank you. And discussion, anyone have any comment? All right, then I'll take a vote. All in favor for approving last meeting's minutes? Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, now bring us into the consent agenda, which we have one item in there for the UPWP. And Rosie, would you like to present that for us?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I didn't prepare a presentation. This is an administrative amendment to the 2019-2021 UPWP, Unified Planning Work Program. This amendment moves approximately $58,000 from fiscal year 21 STDG funds into fiscal year 22, and this is a result of federal obligation authority not being available in fiscal year 21, and so we requested it moved forward. There's one other administrative change, just noting that we may exceed our in-kind budget used in the UPWP. We didn't have to include this, but I did change it to match what will be on the 22-24 fiscal year 22-23 UPWP, just that it leaves our in-kind open-ended. So those are the only changes being made to the UPWP, and it's the final administrative amendment for the year. And that concludes my presentation.
Perfect, thank you, Rosie. Discussion by any members of the TAC? Go ahead, Anne. I see your hand up in the picture.
Thanks, Nick. And Rosie, I apologize. I've been scrolling on multiple screens. There was one comment Mountain Lion had when we were, I think this was the document you provided the opportunity to provide comments on a couple weeks ago. And I think Heather had a request to, I think it was under section 400. It was about the tip and calling out or not calling out the ALI process, and it looks like you changed it. I just can't tell. And Dave had said he was going to remove that language from the UPWP. So I don't know if you're able to confirm that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to like look at the original one you sent, and yeah.
I don't think so. I think we updated the fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. I'm not aware of other changes to, this is the current program year that ends June 30th.
Okay.
This is just an administrative change. That change, if you don't see it on the next presentation, I think it's the first item in discussion.
Okay, thank you. Now I understand. It's the different, okay. Got my years mixed up. Thanks.
No, thank you.
I'm good, Nick.
Anyone else have any questions or items for discussion on this item? Okay.
We are looking for a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Does anyone want to make the motion to approve?
This is Anne. I'll make a motion to
Just need to
amend.
recommend to the executive.
Oh, go ahead. I think you're frozen. I can't tell if you're frozen or I am. I'll make amendment to a motion to amend.
Great. Can you all hear me?
This is Greg. I'll second it.
Okay. Can you all hear me for getting any eyes on this?
Yes, we can hear you now. You keep freezing though.
Okay, I turned off video. Hopefully that having a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. That will take us into our general business. I apologize, Jeff. I'm trying to remember already. Did you want to start with item B?
Yeah, yes, actually, why don't we do that? Because that would allow Brett Peterson to do his presentation, and then Audra Merritt could do her presentation. So I will scroll down to my very brief staff report with the Proposition 419 and 420 update. And really, my role in this is to introduce Brett Peterson, who is going to update us on how these projects are rolling out. Brett?
Okay, let me take over the share screen. Nice to see all the faces that are on this meeting. Here, so you should be seeing a spreadsheet of our capital improvement program summary. Did that pop up on your screens?
Yes, we can see it, Brett.
Okay.
Yes.
So great. So I know most, if not all of you. My name is Brett Peterson. I'm the capital improvements engineer for the city of Flagstaff. Jeff Milbeck, thank you for the invitation to present this program and for your patience in allowing us to roll it out after our city council had their first glance at it last Friday. What I would like to do today is turn a 70-minute presentation that was given to council the other day into a relatively brief conversation, but I want to stay focused on our transportation program. Can you see the capital improvement program table that was part of the PowerPoint presentation that was presented to council? It's headed capital improvement program.
Yes.
Okay, great. So as part of the capital improvement program, there's some components of it that I want you all to understand. It's quite a simple document to look at as we move forward, but it's broken into the different programs. And so we have general government, streets and transportation, which is where we're going to spend our time today. BBB has a couple components to it. And then water services has 4 components. That's drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, and reclaimed water. And then solid waste has some landfill improvements that are identified in the 5-year program, as well as there's some improvements out at the airport. Again, we are going to stay focused on the streets and transportation component of this. But what I will ask you to focus on in the spreadsheet that I'll be sharing here in just a second is the current fiscal year FY21 estimate, and then the proposed fiscal year that starts July 1st for the city of Flagstaff for FY22, and then the remaining 4 years of that 5-year program. So this is a table that was provided to council. They've seen these numbers. I've double checked them all. It's all the information is consistent with the spreadsheet. Real quickly, I'm not going to spend any time talking about general government today. Here's a image that introduced the streets and transportation program. This is the Beulah University exhibit where the old ADOT facility was, and where the Beulah and University realignment will be built as a component of the P3, the public-private partnership that the city of Flagstaff has entered into with Vintage Partners. The FY21 estimate, we tried to highlight some of the key components of projects that are in the current fiscal year, which included funding that was available for the Butler Avenue widening project, funding available for Beulah University, Coconino Estates Phase 1, which is currently under construction, and a project that is part of road repair and street safety identified as the West Flag improvements. Heading into the FY22 budget that begins July 1st, we have similar projects, including the Lone Tree Overpass. So when Jeff talked about in the title of his agenda, we have Proposition 419, which is transportation tax renewal for a variety of projects. And then we have Proposition 420, which was revenue generated from a tax that's specifically to be used for the Lone Tree Overpass. So I can get you up to date on where the Lone Tree Overpass project is, and then we can talk a little bit about the remaining 4 years of the 5-year program. I'm going to skip BBB, water services, drinking water, wastewater. All that information again is available on the city's city council's website. If you care to pull it up, and then we ask for council discussion. My presentation was about 45-50 minutes long the other day. Council participation was about 15 minutes or so, and I think we got a pretty good head nod on we were headed down the right path moving forward. So spreadsheets are often a little difficult to share. I'm going to try to zoom in just a little bit, but I don't want to lose the ability for you to really focus big picture on what this document entails. So it starts on page 205. That was part of the packet that was presented to City Council. What we're seeing here is the old transportation tax projects, and her funding, as an example, was a category that we've been tracking. In the past, it's the location that we have funding for projects like the remaining Sunnyside Street improvements that are necessary, et cetera. But what you'll notice is in this table, there are no funds shown in future years. And that was very intentional, because we have to distinguish between the old transportation tax that was originally approved in 2000 from the tax that was renewed in 2018 but began to accrue in 2020. So we are transitioning away from tracking the old tax projects and moving into tracking the new tax projects. And then we've also got, under the old tax, the tax that was approved in 2014, the Road Repair and Street Safety Program. The commitment to the voters back at the time Road Repair and Street Safety was implemented was that we would touch every street in Flagstaff within the first 7 years. We are on track to complete that effort. And Coconino Estates and the West Flag improvements that I spoke of previously are projects that will be wrapping up our component of that first 7 years of the 20-year tax. And then things like pavement overlays, which is something that Public Works manages. You can see in the out years, they really start to benefit from a significant amount of money that's going to be available to keep our roadway network up to a status that the citizens would expect. Years ago, when we developed Road Repair and Street Safety, it was recognized that we were falling behind in our maintenance of our paved roadways, and this was a way to identify some funding that could be specifically designated for road repair and street safety improvements, including there was some funding for the streets that were in really, really bad shape to be able to upgrade the underground utilities, water and sewer primarily, some storm drain, to bring those that infrastructure up to standard so that we wouldn't have to cut into a brand new, recently overlaid street moving forward. And then as we move further on down, this is the second page, is where we start to talk about tracking the Proposition 420 funding, which again is identified here as the Lone Tree Railroad Overpass project. We had funding available in FY21 to get that project rolling. I'm happy to say that we have hired a design build team. We meet at least every 2 weeks. My project manager, Christine Cameron, is heading up this effort. She's engaged in conversations across the board, whether it's with ADOT, Mountain Line, BNSF, et cetera, and making sure we're coordinating all of those efforts. I'm thrilled with the progress we've made to date. We had a meeting earlier this morning. It was really exciting to see the progress that's being made and how we can truly coordinate our effort with a project like the Rio de Flag, the timing of our project, the Lone Tree Overpass. It's very possible that we will have the overpass complete before we get the Rio de Flag project, lower reach section with shovels in the ground. And so we're just trying to stay on top of all of that right now. Many of you probably heard me say it before, and I'll repeat it here, that the commitment to the voters for the Lone Tree Overpass was that we would be driving on this new roadway by November of 2026. And we are currently on track to make sure that timeframe is met and we can move forward. So that's the update on Prop 420. I'm happy to go into a little more detail, but if we have specific questions, I think we're so early in the process that if need be, I can take those questions from this group, work with my design build team, including my project manager, and make sure that we get you up to speed with the current status of where we're at and how that's going to move forward. And then as we drop down into these other programs, this is the new TAC stuff. So Mr. Milebeck, I'm sure you're familiar with that category for roadway, pedestrian, bicycle, and safety improvements. That's broken into different categories that were defined by our Citizens Transportation Tax Commission. Those categories included new street projects. So JWP from Lake Mary Road out to the airport was one of those new street projects. The other one would be JWP from the end of Pine Canyon to Butler and 4th intersection is a new project. That JWP piece that runs from Pine Canyon to 4th Street is only funded at 40% of the money that we anticipate needing to construct that roadway. Therefore, we don't have it shown in the first 5 years of this current 5-year program, but we do have the piece from Lake Mary Road out to the airport shown in full, where in FY25, we will have $502,000 to get the design rolling, and we'll have another $14 million added to that will come in FY26 and 27. There's $7 million in both 26 and 27. The total here is shown at 502 or 7502, but the total for that specific project is $14,502,000. As we break down into some of the other categories, we have street widening projects. So Butler Avenue widening is a project that's on this list. 4th Street reconstruction. We've got some reconstruction components underway as we speak. The last remaining piece, we've got with the help of our friends at ADOT, we were able to construct and be a part of the 4th Street bridge replacement. So not only did those bridges over I-40 get longer, they also got wider. The lengthening of those bridges will accommodate additional infrastructure improvements for the interstate, so they could possibly add a 3rd, possibly a 4th lane at some point in the future without having to reconstruct those bridges at some point at a later date. And then for the city of Flagstaff, that was clearly a bottleneck, that the previous bridge was so narrow, it was really uncomfortable for pedestrians and bicyclists to navigate across that bridge with the neighborhood on the south and things like the Aquaplex on the north. It was it was a very pedestrian heavy type of a bridge that just wasn't comfortable. And we heard that loud and clear. We're very thankful that ADOT entertained our discussion about partnering on those bridge replacements. And we feel very strongly that the final outcome is a bridge that we can all be very, very proud of, both aesthetically and from a functional standpoint. And then moving down the next category, street operations, we have some broad categories like signal and traffic management funding that is designated was identified by the Citizens Transportation Tax Commission to allocate a specific dollar amount. And then what Jeff Bauman and myself, our traffic engineer, did was we went through and started to prioritize, where does the majority of that funding need to occur, with some recent efforts associated with the traffic technology grant that was available. We were able to bring some funding forward to make sure that we had identified within our FY22 budget funding to pay for not only the city's share of that grant, but also to recognize that the grant was going to bring funding to the program as well, and the combined total would be the $3 million that's identified in FY22. Neighborhood plans was something that was identified as an effort that the Citizens Transportation Tax Commission would have wanted us to stay focused on and make sure that we had good neighborhood plans moving forward. And so we've gone through that total allocation and divvied it up over the 20-year period. Dark skies lighting is a big thing for us. We've front loaded this program to see if we can't get that dark skies lighting implemented sooner rather than later. There's a line item for Lockett and 4th Roundabout. That one is a partnership between the city and ADOT. And Jeff Bauman and one of my project managers, Jeremy DeGator, gave a presentation here recently about the alternatives that were considered for the roundabout. We got council's direction on what type of roundabout they would like to see moving forward. And so that effort is headed down a good path, and we're feeling comfortable with the progress and the input that we've made on that particular effort. Intersection improvements is a pretty broad category, but it was a little more clearly defined in the publicity pamphlet that went out in 2018 for Proposition 419. And it's just that it's intersections that we've recognized we needed a funding source for, to upgrade various intersections throughout the community and make sure that that those projects continue to advance. Country Club Oakmont, we're glad to see that one has funding beginning in 2023. The majority of the construction funding comes later, but we're trying to time that one with the signal warrants that would be met, and when those signal warrants would be met for an intersection improvement there at Country Club Oakmont. West Route 66 is an ADOT route. The Citizens Transportation Commission was clear that they wanted to designate some funding for improvements along West Route 66. And so we've got that built into the program. And again, this tax is a 20-year tax. So it's going to run, it's actually a 21-year tax. It's going to run through 2041. And what we've been able to do in conjunction with our accountants is truly look at that 20-year window and identify funding for that entire 20-year period. So we didn't just divide everything by 20 or 21 years. We were trying to be strategic about it, but some of these things, like we'll see here in just a minute, a FOOTS program, we were specifically asked, could we front load the bike and ped improvements to the tune of $2 million a year and then keep another $1 million a year for the remaining years of that program, but just to get the kind of front load those bike and ped projects moving forward. So yeah, corridor studies and quiet zone modifications are two things that were identified that we need to keep in mind. We, as you're all aware, that the quiet zone through Flagstaff is truly, it's from one edge of the city limits to the other edge of the city limits. The unique component here is that the at-grade crossings at Beaver, at San Francisco, and at Ponderosa Parkway are truly silent or quiet. The crossings at Steve's and at Fanning both have Wayside's horns associated with them. So when the train comes through, it's not the train blowing the horn, it's the Wayside horn being triggered by the fact that a train is approaching that intersection, because we couldn't implement things back in the day like grade separated crossings or 4-quadrant gates to truly have all 5 of these at grade crossings truly silent. And then the last on this in this grouping is the bicycle and pedestrian projects. We have some funding identified for sidewalk improvements. In this particular case, it was $500,000 in the Coconino Estates neighborhood. We had Cedar Trail, a couple other, the Future Trails grant funding was identified. We had the very general planning category to make sure that we are moving all of the planning efforts forward as we need to. Sidewalk infill program was identified. We're actually talking with other groups to see if we can't figure out a way to get some of this infill sidewalk component tacked on to perhaps one of the Public Works annual curb gutter and sidewalk replacement program. And so the beauty here is that we have funding for those types of things. And Martin Ince has done a really good job of evaluating and creating and maintaining a sidewalk infill. Where are those pieces that need to be done, and which ones would be the highest priority? So we're coordinating that effort with others in the organization. Bike lane striping is something that's certainly high on our council's radar right now, and so we have identified some funding. We're looking to do some different bike lane striping, either renewal or enhancements to the existing network, so that we can get so the bike lanes are very well delineated and have that safer feel to them. Sinclair Ridge in this case, I think was a typo from a previous effort. So I anticipate that one is not going to appear like this. Sinclair Ridge Trail that we're talking about in this case is on the far west side of town, and in that pocket of land between University Heights and Mountain Dell. And there's a small section of trail that would be beneficial to create a network and connection to the Foots Trail that runs all the way out to Fort Tuthill. But we're still working out details on that one, and trying to negotiate the property rights that we would need through a parcel or two in that region. Let's see, Fort Valley Plaza access, there's some funding. And then as we continue to move on down, so this is a continuation of that broader category of bicycle and pedestrian projects. And so as we move on down, one thing you'll notice here is that there's no funding identified in that former or our current FY21 budget. It's because this is all that new tax money. So what we've identified moving forward is how does that new tax fall in not only FY22, but the remaining 4 years of this 5-year program. And so there's funding available for sidewalk projects, protected bike lanes, which is more than just a bike stripe, bike lane stripe on the roadway, enhanced beacon crossings, so some strategically located flashing beacons, similar to like what we have over on the east side of town, Cedar Avenue near the old East Flag Junior High. Mount Eldon Middle School is the name these days. Then we have the first and last mile grant that is, we were successful in receiving some grant funding from through efforts with Mountain Line, and what we've identified for those projects was not only a way that we could deliver several of these broader category type improvements, but we've spread it out over a 3-year period, recognizing that our work program is such that it might be difficult to spend $5.5 million a year for these products, for these categories moving forward. And so we've kind of shared the wealth over a 3-year period. We're feeling pretty comfortable that the way this is broken out, it is going to be something that we can manage and deliver these improvements for the community. Marshall Trail is a project that runs on the in between Flag High and Marshall Elementary School on the west side of town here. It takes advantage of an easement, a utility easement that falls from Mama Burger, basically, over to the entrance at Marshall Elementary School. We think that would be a decent project to keep on the list and move forward. We have just constructed some sidewalk improvements along Navajo Road, which is on the street just north of this location. And the critical timing of it might be something that we could delay just a little bit, but we do still feel it's a very valid project moving forward. Schultz Pass Trail, Sawmill Trail, Country Club Trail. We have a lot of Fox Glen Trail, Schweitzer Canyon Trail. Those are all really good projects that, we're excited to see move forward. The Schweitzer Canyon Trail, we actually own the land now. We have a design that's probably about 90% complete. We're seeing if there's an opportunity right now to combine and connect the Schweitzer Canyon Trail down to this future Lone Tree Overpass project. I think that might be a good connection to have. That being said, we've got some grade challenges in that area and some limitations on funding that'll be available to pick up too many more parcels. But that being said, we really want to keep a holistic view on the art of the possible and make sure that if there is an opportunity for us to take advantage of existing city funding plus something else, maybe we can pull off something that might be an enhancement that the community could really embrace themselves around and endorse from our perspective. And then the final category is this general improvements and partnerships. We have essentially $15 million over the 20-year program for general partnering opportunities. We are being somewhat selective in how we define what those opportunities may include. It is a decent amount of money, and we're trying to be sensitive to the fact that while there may be more opportunities than we can actually fund with $15 million, it's nice to have that funding identified and available specifically for those types of projects. And then reserve for improvements in traffic engineering. The reserve for improvements category is just something if the revenue that comes in is slightly higher than we anticipated, we can always add it to future years funding. And traditionally, I think our finance group has been fairly conservative in the revenue projections that we anticipate. So it's not uncommon for us to actually bring in a little bit more money than we anticipated. We actually, with this transportation tax and the impact by COVID, are recognizing that we were very conservative in what we thought our revenues were going to be, and we've actually slightly exceeded those going into the development of the FY22 budget. So it's a category like that that just allows us to keep track of those additional funds and be smart about how and where we can distribute any additional funding throughout the remainder of the program as we move forward. With that, I think I'm going to go ahead and stop. There are some, as you can see under the FOOTS program, this stops at the current year. We're carrying forward funding for Florence Walnut and the Florence Walnut Bridge. All of that funding is still identified because we haven't spent it yet. That's a project that is somewhat contingent upon our successful negotiations with BNSF Railway to construct the Rieta Flag project. We think we've got a plan that not only BNSF can endorse, but that would allow us to spend that money for the Florence Walnut grade separated pedestrian only crossing. And we have that money identified. It is money that was generated by the old tax, so we have to keep that one where it's at. But as you can see, the remaining years of the program do not have any funding. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking, and I would happily entertain any questions or concerns you all may have.
All right, do we have any comments or questions for Brett?
Nick, this is Anne.
Go ahead, Ann.
Unless somebody else has raised their hand, I can't see. I'll start my video. I was trying to share not burn up bandwidth. Thank you, Brett, for the very thorough outline of the whole program. It's really a lot of moving parts. So kudos to you and your team for pulling that together and getting the council buy-in. I had a couple questions, just maybe a clarification. For Lone Tree widening south from essentially JW Powell to Butler, what year was that 12 million? When is construction? I guess that's my punchline question. When do you anticipate construction on that section? I think you had it in the last year, but it scrolled.
Yeah, so yeah, Ann, thank you for the question. Yeah, can you be specific or reiterate
from Butler south to JWP?
Okay, yeah. So we're currently working with. Gosh, we just sent a letter last week, and we got news that a component of the project potentially is up for up to $8 million in surface transportation revenue that Representative O'Halloran was tasked with identifying projects throughout the state that could tap into some funding. We settled internally in conjunction with with MetroPlan and members of city staff and our federal lobbyist on just the portion between Zuni and JWP. That would include a roundabout that would be at the entrance of the community college. We think that the total cost is going to be a little bit more than the 8 million, but we do feel comfortable that we have funding available from Proposition 419 to supplement that component of the project. It will really put the bookends on on Lone Tree. So with Proposition 419 funding to develop the Lone Tree overpass, so Proposition 420 for the Lone Tree overpass project, and then the remainder from Butler down to JWP. There were two components there. Off the top of my head, it was about a $13.5 million funding was available for the piece between Butler and Pine Knoll. And then there was about another, I want to say $22 million that was available from Pine Knoll south to JWP. We feel that with if we're successful in receiving this grant funding, that the remaining, the grant funding will help us build the right project there with the roundabout on the very southern end. Proposition 419 has the northern bookend of the two, and then we'll be able to infill in between as we move forward. I did see an email earlier today that we'll know whether or not we were successful in receiving the $8 million we requested in about October of this year, moving forward. But we were encouraged to hear that Halloran's office was recommending this particular project in that effort moving forward. So yeah, it's some of those in the middle infill pieces are still yet to be determined. We were sensitive to the fact that we didn't want to federalize projects where it didn't seem to make sense. With the improvements that we have anticipated with funding from Proposition 420 for the Lone Tree overpass, and I'll define that as from Butler Avenue up to Route 66. That's all local funding that we didn't want to jeopardize increasing the cost of that by federalizing that component. And then from Butler south down to Sawmill, we anticipate some improvements at the, not only the roadway footprint. So as you're aware, it's one lane in each direction with a really wide median. That was intentional. We'll narrow up that median in the future to add additional lanes. But we're going to incorporate those improvements from Butler down to Sawmill with the Lone Tree Overpass project. So again, we didn't want to federalize that component. We really wanted to focus on a different component, and I think we were successful in working through that thought process and drafting up a proposal that we can all be proud of and yeah, keep our fingers crossed. So I think it'll be a good thing. We do have funding available, and we're trying to figure out how we can not only get those JWP or Lone Tree improvements done, but possibly not revisit, but keep in mind that we have a 60% of the funding that's going to be necessary for the JWP piece between JWP or Pine Canyon and 4th Street moving forward. And so, yeah, if we can leverage some of the funding that we have as a part of this program, that's one strategy that we've been considering, and that's really where we're at. I hope that answers your question, but it is somewhat of a moving target, but it's something that Jeff Bauman and myself, Metro Plan and others are really trying to take into consideration how and when we can move those components of the entire corridor forward over.
Thank you. Thanks, Brett. And then I only had one other question, for the general partnership, the 750,000 annual that's outlined. What is the city's process, or have you identified a process for partners to come forward to either offer or come up with partnership opportunities? Are you seeking unsolicited proposals? I mean, is there some sort of a process that's transparent for, and again, this partnership might be just with other agencies or maybe with private developers. I don't know how you've defined this, but I'm just curious if you've defined a process for, because this is a public document that goes out, right? And so how are external groups supposed to approach the city with a partnership project?
Yeah, and I think that, Ann, that's a very fair question. And I think the intent for that particular line item was spelled out in the publicity pamphlet. I think, maybe that is something that we should share with this group and make sure that you all are on the same page of what the intent there is. And I would imagine that the players that are on this call would all have an interest in the process that will follow to identify when and where that funding would be most appropriately utilized. I can say that with the old tax, having a component that was specifically designated to improvements along 4th Street is what allowed the city of Flagstaff to bite off quite a big chunk of the 4th Street Bridge replacement project. If you recall that project was a project that was slated for a rehab, and what we expressed was a concern that, gosh, we'd really hate to have ADOT spend money on just a rehab if it's going to be a bridge that is the same width as it was. And so, we dug deep and I think I've heard the term, dug through the couch cushions to try to find the funding that we could pull together. And it was quite a significant amount of money, but there again, we were able to take advantage of exceeded revenues that were specifically designated for that corridor and could only be spent in that corridor. And I think in this particular case, we tried to be a little more broad with the language in the publicity pamphlet for how that money can be utilized. But it's a very fair question, Ann, and I think we owe you all an answer. I don't have it specifically today, but I can assure you that it'll be high on our radar, and we'll define it and make it clear. And I think this group would be, the input from this group would be valued as we move forward to develop that process.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, thank you, Brett. And for the sake of time, it looks like we probably do need to move on to the next item. But are there any other pressing questions we have for Brett?
It doesn't look like it's like you do, and I apologize for going long. This is an area that I literally we could spend another 2 hours on if we wanted to. I'm happy to continue to offer up myself if you all would like additional information or updates as we move forward. So keep that in mind and know that I'm not far away. Happy to explain it. If you have any questions associated with any of this, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. And just to let you know that Ann Dunno asked in the chat if you'd be able to share the program budget sheet with us.
Let me check with our accountants. It's currently on the city's website under council meetings agendas. I just want to caution that as we stated in one of the early slides, this is a living document that is going to change. One of the things that from a timing perspective that you can expect is that when we're looking at this column for the estimate for a current budget, keep in mind things that the examples I gave with our city council was that the courthouse is a project that we're all familiar with. It's occupied for all intents and purposes. The citizens would assume that it's completed. We still have to tear down the old courthouse. We still have to build a temporary parking lot. And so we have to carry some money forward into next year. But the majority of the money that was designated for that courthouse, we're going to spend every penny of it, but we're going to have to carry forward some of it. The other example that I gave was the USGS buildings. We've got two buildings we're demoing and 2 buildings to construct up at the USGS campus. We had $10 million in the budget this year. We spent very, very, very little. of that $10 million. And so all of that is going to get carried forward. So when you see these spreadsheets and you say, well, your estimate was going to be this for that, you got to just keep in mind that it's a fluid document that's ever evolving. And we literally turned in our estimates for the FY21 budget the Friday before my presentation to council on the 23rd, so 1 week in advance. So that information isn't shared here. Let me check with my accountants and make sure that they're comfortable with me sharing it, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Brett. And Jeff, doesn't look like you need a motion for this item. If you are, I can move on to the next item.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brett. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Audra to give us an update on regional broadband and fiber.
Perfect. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, everyone. This is Audra. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. My screen's got a little strange. Something flipped on me, so I wasn't sure. So I believe I know most of you. My name is Audra Merrick, and I am ADOT's North Central District Engineer. I've been asked by Jeff to provide the TAC a brief I-17 fiber project update. I did share this with the management committee last month. And thank you for having me here to provide it to you today. This is a snapshot of key broadband laws, regulations, policies, guidelines, so on and so forth over the last 30 years. I just really just put this in the presentation so that if anyone was interested, they could look up the history of it. This slide actually shows the major trunk lines of fiber across the United States, as well as the gaps. As you can see in the red circle, I-17 and further to the north and along the I-40 corridor are critical to connecting the current infrastructure. So first, I'd like to start out by making everyone aware that ADOT is just one of the supporting agencies in the broadband program for the state of Arizona. The governor's office and the Arizona Commerce Authority do lead the way on these efforts. The Arizona Commerce Authority Director, Jeff Sabaka, is the state broadband director. And a lot of us agencies such as Arizona State Lands, Department of Ed, and ADOT just really support Jeff in deploying broadband around the state. And so how does ADOT really specifically fit into this picture? Really, it's since we own the highways and people want to put the utilities such as broadband along our highway right away. That's how we really kind of fall into this. And we also help deliver the projects. So the governor's office and the Arizona Commerce Authority select the routes that will be built, and then ADOT delivers those projects. So what you see on the screen is from last year when the governor started making a push for broadband initiatives. You can see he identified the I-17, the I-19, and I-40 as broadband corridors for the state of Arizona, which means those are our priorities for the state right now at the moment. So a few quick brief updates on those projects. For the I-17 corridor, we were in negotiations for a CMAR, which is Construction Management at Risk, GMP, which is a guaranteed maximum price contract. And so we were in negotiations for a CMAR GMP from Phoenix to Flagstaff. The GMP was not reached. And so as a result, the I-17 section from McGuiredville to Flagstaff is advertising now under our traditional design bid build mechanism. Those bids open this Friday. And so we're anticipating having construction complete really the whole corridor by next year. But that McGuireville to Flagstaff section will go first. And so for the other sections, they're going to continue negotiations of that GMP for the Seymour contract. And if they're not reached, then they'll deliver the construction of those segments through alternative mechanisms to construct, just like they did the McGuireville to Flagstaff piece. For the I-19 section, that's actually a design build contract. And those RFQs are requests for qualifications, was advertised for the contractors to apply for it. I haven't heard if a contract yet was selected for that design build or not, but that project goes from Nogales to Tucson, and you can see that in the top right-hand corner of the slide. For the I-17 project, that's about 130 miles. We do have some of the existing conduit already in really the Phoenix metro area. And for the I-19 section from Nogales to Tucson, that's about a 55 mile, I think they say 56 miles section of fiber. For I-40, although I-40 is about 360 miles from beginning to end, right now our main focus on that really is that western side from Flagstaff to the California border. That's the most recent project that the governor announced. They did invest some money, I believe, out of the general fund to do that segment, which is about 190 miles, that west segment. And we don't really have any major updates on that right now at the moment. Right now, we're concentrating on the 17 and the 19 corridors, and then we'll apply those best practices to those corridors, really on the I-40 section, with that west section probably coming first. I just wanted to share a little bit, because this is always interesting, about the lands that our highways sit on. Of course, any highway, there are portions of our roadways that ADOT owns in fee. And then there's areas that we have under easements that we pass through. And I know that the city of Flagstaff has learned this on really the Red Gap branch discussions. So they're familiar with some of these challenges. So we're basically permitted to be on that property where our easements are at, and they're from private landowners to railroads, to local project agencies, some state lands, federal agencies like federal or Forest Service, and possibly BLM, and of course those tribal areas as well. And so this diagram really is a breakdown of the 3 corridors, and the numbers you see in the chart, the red numbers, are the easements that we pass through. So for example, in 17, there's 85 transportation purpose only easements to pass through. There's 166 on 40, and there's 14 of them down there on I-19. And when I say transportation purposes only, that's what the easement's for. So it allows us to design, construct, maintain, operate, our highway system, and our intelligent transportation system, our ITS devices, which is what we're talking about here today, such as our cameras, message boards, all those types of things are included in transportation purpose. And so with these easements, ADOT already has with entities on ADOT right away, we're able to perform that mission set, so to speak, as far as the highway itself. In other words, we can deploy those ITS systems or devices with our current easements. With the broadband initiative, things have changed. So now we're being asked by the governor's office to allow third-party providers into that conduit along with us. And so our easement language does not allow that right now. It only allows transportation purposes. Easement language will need to be broadened to allow what the state wants to do with broadband on those areas. And they're working on that probably as we speak. So that's all I really have today. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
Perfect. Thank you, Audra. Does anyone have any questions for Audra?
Nick, this is Anne.
Go ahead, Ann.
I'll ask a question. Audra, thank you for the presentation. Quick question, how, these are the three priority corridors. Is there a second phase that's going to reach out to the reservation areas, or is there planning coordination with the Navajo Nation? Those areas to the north, east in our state? Do you know, or is that?
Yeah, so right now from an ADOT perspective, our primary function right now is to get these fiber on the interstates. And right now we do have requests coming in from fiber companies for our secondary routes. And so yes, those conversations are happening generally through encroachment permit process.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, I guess it sounds like there's a lot of lawyers and attorneys involved with updating easements. So good luck with that.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Any other comments, questions, or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. I just want to thank Audra for taking the time to present to our management committee last week and to this group today on this very important work.
Yes, thank you very much, Audra. I really appreciate the presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, with that, Jeff, are you okay with starting back from A, or do you have another priority to hit in our agenda?
I am good with starting back at A, and I believe I put it back up on screen.
Yep, we can see your screen again. Yeah, if we can go ahead and you can present that item to us, please.
Okay, well, thank you for your flexibility in moving the agenda around, and to everybody in the room, thank you for being here. Item number A is the fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 2023 Unified Planning Work Program. And as your staff report points out, this Unified Planning Work Program essentially documents, as required by ADOT and FHWA and FTA, essentially documents all of the work that we will be doing and what funding we'll be spending in fiscal years 2022 and 2023. We just went to a 2-year work program 2 years ago. So we're just finishing up our current 2-year work program. And I think it's worked well. I would, defer to folks from ADOT or FHWA if they want to share anything about that process, overall, how it's working for the state. For MetroPlan's perspective, though, we've been able to amend the current document as Rosie did at the beginning of this meeting. And now we've put together the next document for the next 2 years to capture all of our work. We sent out a draft of the document a couple of weeks ago, and we received a considerable amount of feedback, and then updated the document again and sent it to everyone last week when we sent out this packet. So what we are asking for essentially is for the TAC to endorse this UPWP for the next 2 years, and then we'll take it to the board and ask them also to adopt it. And I can certainly go into more detail, but I think since people have already looked at 2 drafts of this, Mr. Chairman, I might just pause here and see if Jason James has anything he wants to say, and then open it up for questions and comments.
Perfect, thank you. Jason, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, sure. It was actually a very, very productive meeting between MetroPlan and with FHWA a couple weeks ago. Per my review, all the comments that were received were updated in the work program, so I'm good with it. And great job to the MetroPlan staff for getting that done in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we'll open up to discussion.
Nick, this is Anne. So
Go
I
ahead.
believe Jason just answered my question, which I started with inadvertently with Rosie about an hour ago. So about striking that language about the ALI, it looks like it's out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
Hi,
I
this is
cannot-
Dan.
Go ahead, Dan.
I've got a couple questions and comments. Just right from the beginning, this is housekeeping. I could just email Rosie, but my title is Community Development Director. You've got Development Services Director. Simple fix. Had a question going down to page 5. I'm just scrolling through the document here, so bear with me. On page 5, under Metro Plan staffing, there's a note about a transportation planner. It says this position is under consideration, entry-level technical position supporting the planning manager. See notes under task 500. And I had trouble finding that task 500. I think what it was referring to is there's a work element 500 on page 21, 22. And so maybe that could be clarified by saying see notes under work element 500 and maybe even a page reference to get you there. And so when you do go down to page 21, 22, there's a note about the position would be funded out of potentially out of consulting funds, I think is what it says. It's actually on
Yeah,
page
is that a question?
23. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling to it. So it's on page 23, and there's a consultant activities with an asterisk, pending board approval, consultant activities may be reduced to pay for a Metro Plan transportation planner. So I guess my one comment is I think you should clarify back on the page 5 where to find this note. And then I guess I'm just curious about this new position. You know, one of the things when Metro Plan was created, kind of the reorg of the MPO, I think one of the things that I think was missing was a conversation with the technical advisory committee about what the needs were of the MPO at that time. And so I think if you do move forward with creating a new position and a transportation planner, I would ask that you coordinate that with the TAC and help us work on a job description and a work program so we can coordinate all of our work that's being done. And I was not clear if that kind of an item would come to TAC for approval. I don't recall discussion before about a new position. Maybe I missed it, but I don't know if that's specific to this document, but just in general, if you move forward with that position, I'd appreciate a discussion at TAC so TAC could assist you in filling that and identifying the need.
Thank you.
The next one is on the tip, page 17 and 18. So I was a little surprised at what little is in here, and maybe I'm misunderstanding the document, but you know, part of what a tip should reflect, I think, is the local projects, and it even says coordinating local capital projects. And like even the mini grant, which I know is mentioned in the program, you know, where would the mini grant be found? Wouldn't you put that in the tip? I'm just surprised that the dollars are so low, $18,000. Should this reflect the local projects? You've got $1,000 for local projects. Like,
I'm
that's
not
a
sure
question about
I
the tip.
understand the question.
Yeah.
Can
Go
you
ahead.
could you ask that again, Dan? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So on page 18 of the document, you've got your tip table, or it's not the tip table, I guess, but it's supposed to be a summary of the tip. And so there's very little money in here. It's 18,684. So maybe I'm misunderstanding. Maybe this is dollars to support the tip and not the actual dollars in the tip. But like, I don't see any local projects reflected in here or even the mini grant.
Sure, Mr. Chairman and Dan, I can address that. Appreciate the question. I understand the confusion. This amount, $18,000, is just what it costs us to produce the tip. So we've essentially apportioned a portion of somebody's salary to this particular element. And it's about how much it'll cost for us to create and manage and produce the tip and amend it over the course of the year. This $18,000 is not a reflection of the amount of money in the tip.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
Mhm.
Moving on down to page 21. So this is in the special project planning section, work element 500. I just find it a little confusing. There's 4 bullets in here. And I guess I'm curious how they're differentiated or if they're all kind of the same thing. One is completed the active transportation, pedestrian and bicycle master plan, metro plan. And then there's a bullet a few more down. It says, provided input and plan review of the transportation, or no, where is it? Provided leadership on regional trail and bicycle facility plans, develop facility standards, oversee trail system capital budgeting, and provide guidance during project delivery. I mean, I'm assuming that's the active transportation plan. And then provided input or created and adopted the Flagstaff active transportation master plan. And then there's one more supported. There's one in here, I think it says supported the active transportation plan. So I guess I'm curious how those 4 are distinctive. They kind of seem like the same thing to me.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Dan, they look redundant to me too. And this is a section that I need to defer to somebody else on staff who's not here this week. But I think they are redundant. So in our next edit, we can probably condense some of those.
Okay. And then I think the other challenge here is that, these are the accomplishments of the last 2 years. And so I recognize the multimodal position, Martin Ince, shifted from a shared position to all the way to the city. So I'm assuming some of this is reflection of Martin's time with the MPO, because really at this point, the active transportation plan is a city plan. It has not been adopted yet. One of these notes says it's been adopted, which it has not. So yeah, I think that can be cleaned up a little bit.
Thank you.
And then in the same section, let's see. There was a section where you were listing the support staff of the member agencies. And for the city, I thought you should add in the multimodal planner position. I can't recall what page that was on, but it talked about staff, planning staff that you typically work with. I think it was back up actually where you were talking about the new position. And so I would ask you add the multimodal planner under the city's column as somebody you work closely with.
Great, thank you.
And that was it for me. That's actually on page 5, back on page 5.
Okay,
Thank you for my time.
thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Does anyone else have comments or questions? Feel free to jump in or use the raise hand function. I cannot see anyone's video feed.
I'm going to jump in one more time. I did have one more question. And so I'm just curious, the Milton overpass is mentioned a couple times as a project, and I think there's even recommended funding to do a design. And I guess the Milton overpass, we're talking about the railroad bridge over Milton.
Yes.
And so I'm just curious how that all is going to be coordinated between the city, BNSF, ADOT. There's a lot of planning going on with Rick Barrett and his team on the Rio de Flag and ways to get under the railroad. And This bridge is a topic of conversation, so I'm just curious how that is all being coordinated. And if this is something that MetroPlan is really going to take on, is to do a design of that railroad bridge.
So, Mr. Chairman and Dan and members of the TAC, I've got a few answers to that, and it certainly warrants more discussion. What we have identified is, I think, a couple $100,000 to do a design when the city and the other partners say, go. And we would put the scope together and put money towards designing the overpass in a way that benefits all the member agencies. We were supposed to do that this past year. Actually, money was budgeted this current fiscal year, and it just didn't come to fruition where it was ready to move forward. So how it moves forward in the coming year, I'm not sure. I participated and really listened into a meeting with BNSF and ADOT and the City of Flagstaff yesterday. And the other thing I would say is the strategic advance also brought this specific project forward, and that's our next item, is to review the strategic work plan for the coming year. But this project is identified as a specific project for MetroPlan. So all that said, exactly what our role is and how we coordinate with all the member agencies, that's something we still have to figure out as the project unfolds.
All right, thank you for that.
Thank you both. Anyone else? Okay. Turning back to you, Jeff. It sounds like we might have some edits to go in here before we make a motion to approve this. Do you need to take this back for editing, or what are your thoughts?
Well, if it works for the TAC, what I would like to do is incorporate the edits and the feedback we heard today, and produce this and bring it forward to the board. The ADOT would like the UPWP by mid-May. So if we needed to wait until the next meeting of the TAC, it would just slow the process down a bit. So I guess my request would be if somebody could pass a motion that says something like approve this document after the edits presented by the TAC are incorporated.
All right, we're looking for a motion.
I'll go ahead and make that motion since I was the one who asked for some of these edits. So I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the UPWP with the edits that were requested.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is Ann, I'll second.
Okay, motion by Dan Pope to move forward with the edits brought forth, second by Ann Dunham. And if that, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And that'll take us to item C. Jeff?
All right, thank you. Item C is strategic work plan review. And earlier this month, April 7th, we had a great turnout. 30 people participated as we looked at our results over the past year and worked to put together measurable objectives for the coming year. And the document that MetroPlan tries to create every year is a 2-page document. And the first page, and you should be able to see it up on your screen, the strategic work plan has our vision. And this is a draft, so it's from June 30, 2021 to the following December, so an 18-month period. And our vision and mission have not changed. Our guiding principles have not changed. And our 5-year horizon just as a reminder, the 5-year horizon is something that we developed just a year ago at the strategic advance. So those things haven't changed. Those are really foundational to the kind of organization we are and why we exist. The measurable objectives, which I'm putting up on screen now, are the things that we will do specifically over the next 18 months. And as it happens, I think you might all know the management committee typically meets the day after the TAC. The management committee is the city manager, county manager, ADOT district engineer, NAU president's office, and NAPE to CEO. So generally, we meet on the fourth Wednesday for the technical advisory committee, and then the fourth Thursday for the management committee. Well, the way things fell in April, we had the management committee meeting last week. So the management committee was already able to review this, and I've already captured some of their edits. I don't know any way to go through this other than line by line, really as expediently as I can, and just get feedback or comments from the group. Because to keep us on track, I'd like to bring this to the board and ask for them to consider and potentially adopt it next week. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, I'm going to jump in and go through these line by line and then just see if anyone has feedback or comments on each one, and then open it up at the end. Would that be all right?
That'll work, Jeff. Go ahead, please.
Okay, for the measurable objectives, the first one, and I categorize things by technical, relational, and then financial and funding. So for technical, pretty basic, no surprises here. We need to complete our regional transportation plan within the next 18-month period. And if somebody just wants to jump in, if you have something, please do. And I'll pause after each one and then move on. 2, initiate the West Route 66 planning process by the end of this year. This is really a carry forward, something we wanted to do last year and did not get to. We had feedback from the NAPE to CEO and the management committee to move this up to make sure we got it initiated by the end of this current calendar year. Item 3.
Oh, Jeff, this is Ann. I just want to say thank you for moving that up.
Yeah, thank you. Item 3, develop a plan to support electrification of public and private vehicle fleets by the end of this reporting period within 18 months. Number 4, develop a regional approach to maintaining vehicle miles at 2019 levels, also within this 18-month period. And I would point out a lot of the interest in sustainability and the City of Flagstaff declaring a climate emergency and how transportation can support those efforts, is reflected in 3 and 4. Number 5, define what it means to be the finest transportation system in the country. That can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So we're going to go through an effort of having more definition on that. 6, investigate opportunities to promote multimodal transportation offerings and routes via mobile app, again, within the 18-month period. And in the advance, somebody put this out there and then somebody else said, do you mean you're going to reinvent Google? And they were saying it in jest, of course, but I just want to point out there are ways for us to do something locally that we will look into. And then 7, update the project prioritization matrix by June 2021. Run all the projects through the matrix by October and include the possibility of 3 I-40 pedestrian underpass locations. I got to tell you, I squeezed a lot into this. Last year, the project prioritization matrix was something new that people asked of us to get clear on what our projects are and what our role would be. So here what we're doing is just going to update it, improve it, and squeeze in these 3 pedestrian underpass locations that came out at the advance. All right, I'll pause there. And if no one jumps in, I'll move on to the relational topics. Item number 8 is developing a feedback loop to keep the board, TAC, and management committee apprised of changes to priorities and the reasons for those changes, and have it adopted by the end of October. And I just want to speak to this one a little bit. In the past few months, and you heard Brett Peterson speak to it, the opportunity came up for potentially funding, coming to our area. So we really worked hard and fast to see which projects would be most competitive that we could prioritize and start to move forward to ask for funding. And I really didn't go back to the TAC and ask permission, or the management committee. I worked with a lot of people as individuals, but not these formal structures that MetroPlan had established, because things really just shifted in about 4 to 6 weeks. And it's happened so fast that, as Brett Peterson reported, we just learned yesterday that the $8 million request is being submitted by Congressman O'Halloran's office. So, I mean, I think all that is good news. We want to be agile, we want to move fast, and we also want to, I want to communicate with all of you. And I think what this one captures is, maybe I didn't do that well enough. So we will look at our practice to make sure we do that going forward. The next one is tough, I think. It's very interesting to me. Develop a structured, transparent process to bring issues to the table in a timely way to enhance communication and understanding between member agencies. And one of the things that was identified in the survey that we did before the strategic advance was that our organizations don't always agree. They have some different values. Some might be more focused on multimodal, some might be more focused on roads, or in any particular project, there can be a difference of opinion and priority. So when member agencies disagree, what came out of here was maybe MetroPlan can be involved as a more neutral bystander, a more neutral participant, and in creating a transparent process for bringing issues to the table and enhancing communication. I think I'm happy to do it. I think it can be a good role for MetroPlan. It's a tough one because it feels also a little presumptuous for MetroPlan to get too involved in the other organization. So I feel like have to do it with a lot of tact and discretion. But this is when I'd like to take a minute and really hear how the TAC feels, or what you think of this item number 9. Mr. Chairman, can we pause for a little conversation on this?
Yep, of course. Any comments from the members?
Okay. I'll move on to financial and funding. All right, we're halfway there. Item number 10, continue the mini grant program and award that to a multi-agency benefit project. 11, this is a big one, exploring traditional and creative funding mechanisms, provide a report on how to establish a diverse and stable funding strategy for construction and maintenance within a year. That's a big one. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but essentially, it is about getting clear on what all the resources are, what all the expenses are, and being as intentional about that as we can. Item 12, this continue to work with the state about indexing the gas tax for inflation. That opportunity is gone for this year, so we'll move it forward. 13, identify and scope projects for federal and state earmarks by the end of this year. And then we've got a carry forward of 14. This number increased. So our last strategic work plan, the goal is to bring in an additional $750,000 a year. And here we've increased it to $2 million. So additional resources including signal technology, which is a project that Jeff Bowman is aware of, is one of the grants we will be pursuing. 15, and this goes to a question made by Dan Folk. And Dan, your hand is up. Is that current?
It is. I put it up a couple of minutes ago. That's fine.
Sorry about that, Dan. Go ahead.
That's fine. I mean, you can't talk about the mini grant. I have to comment if you're going to bring up the mini grant. So first of all, thank you for including the mini grant. You know, this is very important to me. And I had a thought after the advance. One of the topics that came up a little bit was about, you know, the issues of equity and equality. And I'm struggling, you know, that's a big issue nationwide. And as planners, we're talking about it. And how do you make your communities more accessible to everybody? And, you know, as a transportation planning group, I guess you would focus on the process and including folks who maybe aren't represented a lot. But I had this idea on the mini grant that we could further increase the benefit if we included in there targeting specific neighborhoods for these mini grant projects about transit, sidewalks, multimodal. And I forget what we call them, if they're is it Title VI or basically our lower income neighborhoods. And if that could become a component of the mini grant, just something to think about as we prepare it for the next solicitation.
Thank you.
That was it.
Okay, well, item number 15 gets to a point that you had raised in the comments on the UPWP. Evaluate and determine the need for additional staff to achieve strategic goals by October. And one of the reasons we worded the UPWP the way we did was so that as we do this evaluation, if we do determine there's need for additional staff, how we would go about doing it. So we captured that possibility in the UPWP, and there's still a piece of work for us to do here to go into more detail. All right, item number 16. Here's another one that's already come up today. Commission a Milton Railroad underpass design with scope support from all member agencies by the end of this year. So this gets to, if MetroPlan is going to do anything in terms of design, then all of the member agencies, you know, obviously working through the TAC, would support the scope. And then it'll also include bike and pedestrian access related to the Downtown Connection Center and the Rio to Flag projects, which I'm just summarizing as the Downtown Mile. So this really gets back to Dan's point of, I mean, in all candor, I don't know what this looks like. I don't know exactly how this is going to play out. There's a lot of moving pieces right now, but we've captured it as a piece of work and we have some money towards it. So if we can support really all of the member agencies and projects that are important to them in that corridor, we will. Item 17, participate in review, and this is a carry forward of the Milton Highway 180 plan, hoping that'll be done by the end of this year. Item number 18.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to find my hand. Oh, there it is. I'm going to raise my hand, but I already got your attention. So if we could back up to the bridge design.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was struggling to find mute. Cliche statement, isn't it? You know, I wonder if it wouldn't be better worded, and I don't know that I have the right to change what is on this paper if it accurately documents the discussion that happened at the advance. But I'm wondering if this shouldn't be more about helping us seek funding than it is about the design. That's just my thought. We're advancing the design right now, as you saw. We're between the Lone Tree project and the Rio to Flag project, everything is pointing towards having to rebuild that railroad bridge. And we're doing it as we speak.
Yeah, I think now is exactly the time to do this. I tried to capture what I heard from the advance And if there's another way we can word this, either change it or create more flexibility. I mean, maybe it's a situation where we are passing some of our funds through for the design effort, or maybe just focusing, as you say, on getting funding. So, I mean, I'm open to that. I wonder if others in the room have thoughts.
Both of those are great ideas, and I'll shut up for others to share if there are any.
Go ahead, Ann. I see your hand raised.
Jeff, thanks. Good comment or observation, Rick. I'm kind of thinking, I kind of tend to agree with you, Rick, that if it sounds like the city or another entity is already sort of in this design process, maybe it is more about the sort of scoping the grant funding, finding grant funding, which still might entail spending some money to, pay consultants to put together grant packages. I am curious about how far NEPA process that Rick, the design process you're talking about is actually going, because typically these federal projects require some level of NEPA or demonstration. So maybe it's more of the NEPA process. If your group's not doing NEPA yet, maybe there'd be an opportunity for MetroPlan to contribute towards that effort that would actually help us be more shovel ready for a construction grant. But I do think it sounds like if another entity is taking on the burden of the design and the liability of a contract for design, it doesn't make as much sense that MetroPlan would own that contract for design. And maybe it's really early. It's very I don't know how far you've gotten, Rick, with design.
Well, we're conceptual at this point in time, but I do like the idea of the NEPA, environmental process.
Because we know that that's the only way this will get built, is assuming it'd be a federalized project. So maybe there's a discussion offline with MetroPlan as to what areas your process is sort of missing that this funding could help. But then there's also maybe a grant support. There could be some project assessment type reports that MetroPlan could put together for a grant package.
Yeah.
And I can imagine the 200,000 would go pretty quickly with that, with some of those efforts.
Yeah, or the grant package, including letters of support and, drumming up partnerships, through the MetroPlan. All those are outstanding ideas. So maybe the art of the language here is that we broaden it to be more than just design.
Okay, I'd like to give you some words back that I jotted down as I was listening to you, to say evaluate how MetroPlan could best support a Milton Road underpass through design, funding, environmental work, or other approaches by December 31, 2021.
Yeah, that captures it very well, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay. And then I would go on to.
And I'm one member of the TAC, so I respect the discussion.
So maybe before I move on to the second sentence, can I just see if there's support for this statement as rewritten or not? I see a thumbs up.
I support it.
I can't
Sorry,
find my thumbs up.
In your second sentence.
I support it as well.
All right, now there's even hearts coming in. So
now we got, look at.
You can tell the meeting's getting long. All right, I'm gonna go with that. It's up to somebody to object if they don't like it. And I just want to bring up the second sentence here. Scope will include bike and pedestrian access related to the DCC and Rio de Flag project downtown mile. I felt based on the strategic advance, it was important to capture all of those elements. Agreement, Disagreement with that?
Read it one more time, and I apologize for asking.
Sure. Scope will include bike and pedestrian access related to the Downtown Connection Center and Rio to Flag projects, also known as Downtown Mile.
Okay, Rio de Flag projects. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I like that. I like it a lot.
Okay.
Hey, this is Brett. Maybe it's not my place to say, but the Rio de Flag project is one of several downtown mile projects. And maybe it's just a subtlety, but I thought I'd throw that out there, that the Downtown Connection Center is a project, the Rio de Flag is a project, and the other downtown mile projects.
Well, maybe Brett, to your point, it would be best to just not call it as downtown mile. I mean, that's only a, an affectionate term that some of us close to it have named it. Maybe we should name the projects. But yeah, the intent of the paragraph is to support all the projects in the downtown mile, including, some that were called out, Bike and Ped and DCC. And Rio de Flag. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think this is better. This is better language. I appreciate what Brett and Rick are saying. And I think if I just say DCC and Rio de Flag and other downtown mile projects, and that just captures everything.
There you go.
I like that. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Either Ann, do you still have your hand up, or? Okay.
Oh, we got reactions. Check this out. How fun is that?
All right.
All right. All right, 18, support member agency broadband efforts. This one's pretty contained, but it became clear that, MetroPlan, if we can do anything to support broadband, we want to. It's very important to NAU and to, all of our member agencies. So what I put by writing letters of support and including broadband funding and grant requests and planning documents. So we're going to support it. This is clearly not a leadership role for us. I think I've captured our role correctly here. And obviously, if I have not, let me know. 19 is really a carry forward from last year, participating in the city-led outreach and design efforts for the Lone Tree Corridor and the overpass. And then 20 is continuing to pursue an additional $300,000 for the Lone Tree TI within this period. So that one's still on our radar. So that captures everything that we would be putting in our strategic work plan. I appreciate the feedback so far. I would be taking this to the board next week and asking them if they will adopt it. And what I want to do is tell them what the TAC thinks and whether or not the TAC is in a position to adopt this with the edits we've discussed. Mr. Chairman.
With that, it sounds like Jeff's looking for a motion to move forward with the edits we brought forth today. Would anyone like to make the motion?
This is Greg. I'll make a motion to move forward and approve.
This is Rick Barrett. I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I guess I forgot to call before. Is there any further discussion anyone has on this? All right. We do have the motion to move forward with the edits as discussed by Greg Mace, second by Rick Barrett. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
All right, thank you. The clarity really helps us.
All right, and then Jeff, turning to you with having 12 minutes left, is there anything else you would like to reorder to TAC tackle?
You know, I mean, this is a tough one. Milton discussion, 12 minutes is not enough time. And 1 second, please. I've got the agenda up on the screen. I think you can all see it. I think just staying on schedule. Now, none of these items need action. We've gotten through the items that need to be voted on. And I think I would, Mr. Chairman, defer to you and the group with the remaining items up on the agenda. You know, is there anything here that you want to talk about in the remaining 10 minutes we have?
Well, I'd like to ask for clarity, Jeff, that item F, it does look like you're looking for a recommendation there.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, should we go to that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I want to recognize Dave Wessel is on a very well-deserved vacation, and he has written the staff report and essentially, as the chair points out, seeks TAC endorsement of planning to programming project nominations. And through the background, he talks about the process that ADOT goes through and essentially captures on page 22 the projects that are already included. So he's reviewed all of them and, you know, endorses them, but he's made us some suggestions here that additional projects be nominated. And you can see these 5 bullets. And Mr. Chairman, maybe we can just open this up for discussion and see what the TAC members think.
I think that's an excellent idea, Jeff. Do any members have any comment or discussion on the recommended projects to be nominated?
Chair, I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Dave. I hope he's enjoying his time off. I really like the additional projects that MetroPlan staff recommends. The railroad bridge we're just talking about. However, CMP process is playing out. It's being put in there. The 180 CMP spot improvements, and Milton West Route 66 and the I-17 ramp, which I believe relates to the NAU Mountain Line McConnell project we were working on that we put on pause. So I appreciate that one just being put into the mix. So just a comment, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other members have comment? Go ahead, Rick. I see your hand up.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Dave, who's not here on vacation right now, but this is a very thorough list. Very appreciative of you know, the reference back to the corridor master plans for Milton, US 180, of course, our railroad bridge, fiber projects, and then the I-17 McConnell ramp is a big deal as well. So, yeah, I wonder though, there's one that's missing here. No, it isn't missing here. It's E015, I-40, I-17. So never mind. I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well done.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right. Well, Jeff, I know you're looking for a motion on this. Looking to probably to just add these additional recommended projects. Is that the motion you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. Would anyone like to initiate that motion?
So moved by Dan Folk.
Do we have a second?
This is Ann, I'll second.
Motion by Dan Folk, second by Ann Deno. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Still have a few minutes left. Let's see.
All right, so, Mr. Chairman, the Northern Arizona Healthcare and the Milton discussion are really the two that are left. I don't see how we can open those in the remaining 6 minutes we have.
Agreed.
So what I would like to do is just give you a quick update on the regional transportation plan and then carry those two items forward.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. And the regional transportation plan is going well. We have the request for proposals on the street. It closes. Proposals are due Monday, and we will be reviewing them with an interagency group a week from tomorrow. And I am very hopeful that we will get some very competitive vendors so that we can do a high quality plan. Right now, until we get our proposals back and start to go through that process, it's really just a kind of a wait and see. The intention is to bring some finalists together, run this past the Regional Transportation Plan Advisory Group. And I want to remind people in the room that the Regional Transportation Plan Advisory Group is an additional group that's set up that really has people who are business, sustainability, citizens at large, to make sure they're really engaged in this process throughout. So I'll be asking for their opinion on the consultant we recommend, bringing it back, asking for the tax support of the consultant we recommend, and then moving ahead with the project. So I think that concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Jeff? All right. Taking us back to the agenda. Jeff, do you have any items from the executive director or future agenda items?
Just to let you know that for items for me, item number I here, our board meeting is Wednesday, and our next TAC meeting is a month from today. So I really don't have anything else to share. In terms of future agenda items, I would ask this group if there's items that they would like us to put on the agenda.
Does anyone have anything you'd like to see in the upcoming future? All right. Silence is golden. And with that, I think we have nothing else to cover for today. We'll move those two items till next time. Jeff, is there anything else we need to cover today?
I think we're good. Thank you all for participating.
Well, thank you, everyone. And I adjourn this meeting at 3:27.
Thanks.